Fala pessoal, estamos aqui em mais um vídeo do nosso canal. Antes de eu falar do que se trata o vídeo de hoje, eu peço para que vocês adotem o procedimento padrão de sempre. Abriu, deixou o like, ative o sininho para as notificações, se inscreva no nosso canal caso você não seja inscrito. Nos siga nas nossas outras redes sociais, Facebook, Progland, Instagram, Prog_Land. Se você conhece alguém que produz música ou algo do tipo, envie o seu material para nós via Groover, né, Progland. Por último, mas não menos importante, não deixem de acessar o nosso site proglandmusica.wordpress.com. Lá vocês vão encontrar materiais de resenhas, lançamentos, também entrevistas que vocês não vão encontrar aqui no nosso canal, tá bem? Por último, mas não menos importante, por favor, não deixem também de apoiar aqui o nosso canal via Pix, progtalk2112@gmail.com. Introdutório feito, estamos aqui nessa série de entrevistas aqui no nosso canal e hoje mais uma entrevista com um cara que é, entre aspas, o padrinho das nossas entrevistas internacionais aqui no nosso canal, Steve Hackett, voltando aqui para o nosso canal depois de 2 anos da primeira entrevista dele lá de 2024, dessa vez para uma ocasião ainda mais especial, porque ele junto com os caras do Genetics vão fazer a apresentação aqui no Brasil, agora em março, né, no Rio e em São Paulo também vão fazer uma perna toda sul-americana, né, porque o grupo também é sul-americano, né, e tocando clássicos do Genesis, etc, coisas solo dele também. E o nosso papo foi sobre isso, foi sobre a vinda dele no Brasil, a relação dele com o país também, desde a primeira e única visita do grupo em 77, etc. E também nós conversamos, claro, além de essas colaborações que ele fez e faz com Genetics, também conversamos muito sobre carreira solo do Steve, discos importantes dele, os 50 anos do A Trick of the Tail, completados agora em fevereiro, né? E os 40 anos de um projeto muito bacana que ele fez, que é um projeto meio esquecido na história do prog, mas um projeto bem legal, que é o projeto que ele fez junto com Steve Howe, GTR, em 1986. Conversamos sobre muitos assuntos, sobre indústria fonográfica, sobre projetos futuros, o projeto que ele vai vir também, vai lançar ainda esse ano com Steve Rothery, do Marillion, entre outros inúmeros assuntos e etc. Espero que vocês gostem dessa entrevista, tanto quanto gostaram da primeira, né? Tivemos a participação também do Iago Silame, clássico colaborador aqui nosso também do canal, e muito fã do Steve, do Genesis, como também sou, né, na entrevista. E é isso, espero que vocês curtam, espero que vocês gostem do papo. Digam aí nos comentários o que vocês acharam. E é isso, bom vídeo, boa entrevista aí para quem estiver assistindo. Estamos aqui em mais uma entrevista no nosso canal, de novo com ele aqui no nosso canal, com mais uma participação aqui para uma entrevista super bacana. Já tinha feito uma entrevista maravilhosa com ele em 2024 e agora de novo. Um dos meus heróis, um dos meus ídolos, Steve Hackett here. Thanks so much for your patience, for your goodwill in doing this interview. And first of all, we have some things to cover, of course. And back then, I interviewed you in 2024. Back then, you were releasing The Circus and Night Well, and now is a special occasion, yes, which relates directly to Brazil, to Brazilian, because now you're touring here now in March with the guys from Genetics, South American, yes, tribute band, sure, of, yeah, Genesis. You That's had right. Previously. My first question is related, yeah, to this tour, yeah, and you had previously toured with them in 2015, I think, 2018, and 2020,
three last time when you played the whole seconds out. One of my
Yeah.
all-time favorite shows ever, counting every genres. I get really emotional. I have seen the two dates here in Rio, in Niterói, when you play alongside Richie in the ending
Yes.
along the
Uh-huh.
Watchtower, and
Yes.
in the show from Vivo Rio. I
Yes.
wept, really.
Oh, good. I'm glad
and
you liked it. Thank you. Thank you. I
and
also was re-recording something with Richie recently. From here, I recorded. He's doing another version of Voji song, and
yeah.
I replayed the guitar on it. I think it sounds better than the original, so I think he's going to re-release it, and I hope it's a hit for him all over again.
Oh,
It deserves to be. It's a beautiful song. I remember a very
yeah.
pleasant memory for me. Yes, yeah,
He's wonderful. You co-wrote
yes,
with him A Mulher Invisível too, from the
yeah.
second
There were
album.
one or two things we did together, and he's been a friend for a very long time, and uh, I I knew him before things had taken off for him. He was already a friend, and there were other people that we knew that were from the kind of English community, and some of them were musicians. So yeah, it was a very interesting time. All of that, I was able to do something for him when we
Yeah.
recorded the original Vojikara song. It was just in a small room, um, everything very very basic. Um, but it took off in a big way. And I remember I was about to take one of the cable cars up uh, to the at the Sugarloaf, Pão de
Yeah.
Sugar, and the Morda Orca. As I got into the cable car and the doors closed and the thing started to take off, Vojikara song came on, and I was the only one in the in the thing on my own, and I thought, oh, here's a song about a flight, and here I am flying upwards. It was one of those moments of
Hmm.
extreme synchronicity that I will always remember that, because I think the song
Yeah.
had become a hit at that point, and I was hearing the fruits of it. It was very very nice. It was something done as a favor to a friend, and I was so very happy for him to see things take off, because he'd been trying for a very long time to break
Hmm.
through. Um, yes, it was a great time for him, and I think things have been taking off for him again. Once again, we use the word takeoff.
Hmm.
He
Hmm.
seems to be he seems to be flying again, which is great news.
Yeah. And about coming back to genetics stuff,
Yes.
and how did you discover them among trillions of tribute bands of genetics in the whole world? What kind uh, of let's say, what kind of ingredient you have noticed on them to say, well, I would like to play with these guys?
Well, their singer, their original singer, was killed in a skiing accident, and I think it was very difficult for the band to re-establish themselves. So they asked me if I would do a special guest thing with them. I think first of all, I maybe played one or two songs with them, but uh, it was um, it was plain to me that they did a very good job at, at serving the interests of the Genesis music. So um, it was one of many tributes to Genesis, but they did it very well. I have re-recorded this stuff several times, sometimes with a band, sometimes with an orchestra, in different parts of the world. And but it's the power of the songs that works. I think that's why people like it. When I first came to Brazil, in fact, it was 1974, a very long time ago, and yeah, we're talking 52 years ago. And I noticed that they were playing Genesis on the radio. At the time in England, nobody was playing Genesis on the radio in our own home country. So you could say no man is a prophet in his own country, or you could say that no group really has great success at home. Jimi Hendrix was not a success in America before he made it in England, and then because there was so much interest in him, the Beatles were showing up at his shows in the UK, and so when the guy goes back to America, the land of his birth, of course, there's this extraordinary response. But that's a whole different story. It's just that
Mhm.
sometimes you have to be somewhere else to make an impression, and for some people, success is there all the time, but other
Yeah.
people, success is not just fleeting, but it's up and down. It's like the waves.
Yeah.
Sometimes you have a good wave that comes in, and you've got to ride that wave while it's there, or milk it for all it's worth. That's
Mhm.
that's how it is, and I'm sure you know this yourself, that when the gods are smiling at you, you've really got to work very hard to please them, I think.
You had said something quite interesting about how a success and a career in a certain way is
Yeah.
unpredictable in
Yes.
certain ways. You ended up experimenting things and all the time, especially
Mm.
you, because you had done solo albums with
Yes.
acoustic guitar, full band albums,
Yeah.
collaborations, and all the
Yes.
stuff.
Yes.
And
Yes.
and what do you try to? And I would like to ask about the difference of dynamics as
I.
an
Mm.
instrumentalist. What do
Yes.
you try to do differently with them comparing when you play with your regular solo band with Ned, with Jonas, now with the two new guys, Lally and Felix? I'm really
Yes.
excited to hear stuff with
Yes.
them. And
Yes. Me
what do you
too.
try
Me
to do
too.
differently?
Well, I think, talking with Jonas, um, Jonas Reingold, very interesting, very experienced, an amazing player, amazing, no doubt about it. Um, and he was saying, I think you should try and put together the best band you possibly can. Now, Roger King, the keyboard player I've been working with and collaborated
Yeah.
for many years, wanted to take a break from music. Whether he retires completely or not, it's up to him. We don't know. I think he's going to, be at home and play classical piano, whatever he'll do with that. I don't know what he's going to do. That's up to him. He had also a career in doing film music and all of these things. But anyway,
Oh,
okay,
that's
so adversity, you can see it as an eternal problem, or you use adversity as a spur to improve things. So we found Lale Larson, and I've been rehearsing with him recently, and I've discovered what an incredible musician he is. Just absolutely incredible. I think out of all the keyboard players I've ever worked with, he is the most fluent at many genres, complete virtuoso. Roger described him as a monster player, so he had Roger's approval. Now, he said that he's been working, this is Lally, he said he's been working the past 3 months, 8 hours a day, to learn the stuff that was not only the Genesis stuff, but also my stuff, of course. Um, and he's been putting in a lot of time on this. So he's basically playing it perfectly, you know. I mean, but you know, I said to him, I think this must be the toughest keyboard gig in the world, to have to absorb that stuff and learn it in a concentrated period of time. Normally, when people are playing, you know, the parts that Tony Banks came up with years and years ago, they had forever to put this together. Yeah, 50 years to absorb this stuff. 3 months is really, really intensive to try and get this
Yeah.
stuff down. It's really, really tough. But I've been playing with him and been amazed at what he can do. Also, we have a new drummer with Felix Lerman, who is also fantastic. So the band is just extraordinary. I think it has to be the best band in the world, I think. But hey, you know, it's everyone brings what they bring to music. Everyone brings something else. You know, who is the most amazing? Who was the most amazing keyboard player in the world? J.S. Bach seems to be the guy. Nobody quite got to that level of virtuosity and composition. So even Jack Bruce said
Yeah.
that J.S. Bach was his favorite bass player, the bass parts that
Yeah.
J.S. Bach wrote. Anyway, so I got to, you know, with the Bach stuff, to make an album called Tribute many years later, just acoustic guitar, just one guitar, and to play the stuff that was originally written for cello and violin, all this stuff way back in the day. It translates very well to the guitar. So that's acoustic music. It's not the same as rock music. So, but rock music, there's got to be room for everybody. There's got to
Yeah.
be room for Segovia. There has to be room for Jimi Hendrix. They have both passed now, but obviously they were masters of Baroque and blues, the area that they covered together.
Yeah. And of course, now talking about different things and different collaborations, I'd
Hmm.
like to talk about somewhat about your future, about future
Sure.
projects. And I
Yes.
interviewed a few months ago Steve Rotary here, and at the time he
Yes.
mentioned that you recordings from for your joint album, collaborative
Yes.
album, were
Yes. Yeah.
underway back then, and
Yes.
that would be released now in 2026. Is
Yes, it
there
will.
already a release date for this project? Any kind
Well,
of time frame? How it's
I,
going to be this
I,
project? I'm really
I
excited for
thought,
this one.
yes, me too. I thought it was going to be out in June. It seems the record company might want to make that come out a little bit later in August, I think. But, you know, we're not in control of this. We don't dictate this. This is via the record company. But it
Okay.
sounds really good. I think people are going to like it a lot. It's it's interesting because it's not a guitar competition. It's not as
Oh
if
yeah.
we're trying to play faster than each other. It's we're trying to complement each other and make something that was very melodic and very atmospheric. It's very different to all the stuff that I've ever done with other musicians. Whenever I've worked with another guitarist, there's always this intention to you know, show some sort of technical prowess or whatever.
Mhm.
But this album is very much about the music. If I used an Italian term, I would say it's very legato, it's very adagio, but it's
Yeah.
rock as well, and it's very melodic.
Mhm.
There are lots of things that are very memorable in it. It has a theme of many things that are based on the sea. So we all of the titles in the end we gave them sea titles, and
It would be entirely instrumental, or you have lyrics on this one?
it's basically instrumental. All there
Oh yeah.
is over and above all of that is how can I put it? There's a little bit of singing, but it's mainly background, sort of some
Oh yeah.
ahs and it was just from a little bit of a
Okay.
choir, a few people, friends and family, making this noise.
Okay.
But essentially, it is an instrumental album. It's very interesting working with him because we're friends. We were friends for a long time, Steve Rothery and I, and whatever we've done has come out of friendship and appreciation of each other. It's that's a very important thing, that you can get close as friends. So his wife is called Jo. My wife is called
You say
Jo
that.
as well. So
You
when we
said
go
that.
out to dinner, it's Steve and Joe go out to dinner with Steve and Joe. And we both play guitar, and we both got lovely ladies that we're married to, and the ladies are also close friends as well. So this works very well. I've spent many evenings with them just talking about life and everything in the
Yeah.
world that surrounds music. But we work very
You
well,
guys
very
played. You guys used to play with a singer who used face paint.
Oh
Another
yes,
similarity.
yes, absolutely, yes, that's right. Yes, Peter Gabriel in my case, and Fish in his case, and I think there were quite a lot of similarities between um, Marillion and Genesis, particularly early
Hmm.
Genesis. Of course, Steve Hogarth is a fine singer and very extrovert performer, but I think it was closer in spirit to Genesis
Hmm.
when they first appeared. They were very, very good. In fact, on the radio just yesterday, I heard they had a hit song with Kaylee, which is
Hmm.
very nice, a very nice song back in the day. And that seems to be their eternal hit, you know.
Hmm.
So, yeah, certain things survived. Songs that are not new have this ability to be around in the public consciousness for a
Hmm.
long time. The Genesis stuff has been around, for some of it, for more than 50 years, of course,
Hmm.
and it still gets played. And it's very interesting. When I was first in Brazil many, many years ago, I noticed that they liked selling England by the pound a lot. And they were playing
Hmm.
Dancing with the Moonlit Night on the
Yeah.
radio. I would be
Yeah.
somewhere like Angra dos Reis, and they were playing it on the radio. And I'm thinking, what's going on? This corner of England, visited in song, and transplanted um, to Brazil in the middle of the tropics. It was
Hmm.
surreal for me. It was a shock to me, but it made it possible. When I went back to the UK, I said, "Listen, guys, they're playing us on the radio out there. I think we should visit." And I managed to talk Tony Smith, the manager, into
Yeah.
following up with that. And of course, we came in '77. I know it seems a long time ago now, but I remember it very well because it was a very successful tour. Um, and At that time, of course, it was pre-Rock in Rio and all that sort of stuff. Brazil
Hmm.
hadn't really opened up. They maybe had one international act once every 2 years. Stevie Wonder, I think, at one point, and then
Yeah.
Rick Wakeman, and then it was
Hmm.
us at that time. And of course, Globo was all powerful
Hmm.
as it still is, and they were
Hmm.
advertising it every hour on the TV, a little bit like MTV. MTV did the same thing for GTR when we were in the States. The band that I had with Steve Howe halfway through the
Yeah.
1980s, where every hour, here's the song, here's the message, ba boom, ba boom, ba boom. I
Yeah.
ended up re-recording it, funnily enough, that song with Steve Rothery on it. the thing that was the hit, which was When the Heart Rules the Mind. But
Rules the Mind. Yeah.
we didn't put it on this album because it's a different spirit. The spirit of mid 1980s is very different to the kind of album that Steve Rothery and I have done. We weren't designing the album to be flavor of the month, the next big hit on radio or TV. It's not that kind of album. It's something for people who like music. It's not being hyped. It's not being forced down people's throats.
And it's good that you mentioned GTR because it's on my question list. Let's put that way, because I was thinking a lot on this project, because this project marks this year 40th anniversary, and we are speaking of projects with co-guitarists, you playing alongside other names, and another, this one features another Steve Howe. And I would like to ask, in your POV, in your point of view, how do you analyze this project today, the good and the bad aspects? Because back then you produced an album, somewhat hit album, When Heart Rules the Mind, pushed good sales on the album, and but soon afterwards the band broke up. You left the band, and how do you analyze that project? Because it's so one-off thing in your career.
It was, yes. I think what I'd done with Genesis became a hit over time. We had one hit single when I was with the band, and then John Lennon got interested in the band and started saying some nice things about us. And then when I left the band, because I wanted to do my own stuff, and that didn't fit in with the group idea of giving everything to the group. I how can I describe it? It was a time of turmoil for me. But then by the time I'd been doing solo stuff, I had a small hit with Cell 151, which was on
Highly Strung.
Highly Strung, yeah, good memory, Highly Strung. And then I did the thing with Steve Howe, and in America, Time magazine mentioned that all of the ex-members of Genesis, either present members or ex-members, were in the top 20 at one point. Peter Gabriel had, I think he had Sledgehammer, and I'm not sure if Mike had Mike and the Mechanics. I'm not sure. He may have had that then. But there was whatever Genesis was doing, or whatever Phil was doing. And so Genesis, in a way, together and separately, became big news again. And so I proved to myself that it wasn't an accident that any success that I had with Genesis, I wanted to prove to myself and also the business that I was a viable commodity. There was no in between in the 1980s. If you'd been an albums artist, that was perfect for the 1970s. But if you wanted to have an extraordinary level of success, you had to prove that you could come up with a single. So it was a crazy era. You had the 1960s, everyone wanted to have hit singles. In the 1970s, everyone wanted to have hit albums. That was the emphasis really was on musical odysseys and experimentations, and the idea that people could lose themselves in this world of music that the album offered. Then suddenly the 1980s, the pendulum has swung the other way, where people were making albums that were collections of potential singles. So everyone was back on singles. You weren't really getting albums in the same way that you were getting back in the day. You know, there had to be that hit, and if you couldn't find that hit, there had to be a number of things on an album that might have made potential hits. So I think it was quite a demanding time for those of us who wanted longevity in music. We wanted to continue to have careers in music. So certain steps were made and certain sacrifices were made in order to do that. Now, with the years that followed, when you were no longer young enough to guarantee to have hit singles, because singles are all about being, you know, very young and beautiful and all the rest. Okay, so down the line, you must appeal directly to fans, as it is today. So the idea is that you know, you aren't going to go out and buy any of this stuff because MTV or whatever, any station says, oh, this is the latest thing. You can't possibly be that. You have to be the voice of experience and commit all over again to music emotionally, to do whatever moves you, whether it's to make rock music or work with orchestras or to record the work of great composers. In the case of Bach and Barrios and William Byrd and Enrique Granados, all the things that are wonderful for classical guitarists to play and very demanding and all of that. But now it has to be absolutely honest. I'm not expecting, you know, a TV to fall in love with me because I've got beautiful trousers and beautiful hair and all that. You know, the tail cannot wag the dog at all. We can't. It was Steve Hogarth who said, funnily enough, it's too late to be pop stars. So you've got to be something else, and I think you've got to be something very honest. Yeah, you need to be able to please jazz people, please classical people, write great songs. You need to win the attention of the Beatles all over again. That's what you need to be able to do. So, you know, your work needs to be really, really good today, because the alternative is that AI is going to do it better. And so you've got to be better than AI. You know, all the dance stuff that's around where people have gotten sick of hearing, oh, just a bass drum and a bit of a buh, 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 and then a breakdown and a thing and all that. Well, but the push of a button, AI does all that and more. So you've got to be better than the machine today. So that means you've got to work damn hard, but a success is still possible in a very difficult marketplace where there's only room for a certain amount of people to have success, but you've got to win the crowds over all over again. Isn't that the same as what the Oliver Reed is saying in Gladiator? Win the crowd, win the crowd, and you will win your freedom. Freedom to express yourself and to play music for as long as it moves you.
So you attribute directly the break of this project to the things of audience, to the things of mainstream, nothing related to the band internal politics.
Oh, you mean a GTR? Well,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
GTR was a very expensive band to run. The album had cost an absolute fortune, and
Oh,
so
really?
yes. So unfortunately, it became economically no longer viable to have it, even though it was a success. I tried to convince the people that were involved to do what Peter Gabriel had suggested. He said, oh, the band's name is great, but why don't you invest in equipment so that when the band breaks up, you'll have something to show for it? And so, of course, I say,
Yeah.
you know, why don't we invest in equipment? Blah, 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 blah. but nobody wanted to do that. And so you've got a band politics to deal with, the band and the manager. The idea is that it's all got to cost a lot of money, so that when the record company releases it, they've got to guarantee that it is a hit in order to recoup their investment. Now, this sounds like a very cynical thing, but that's the truth of the way people were thinking in the 1980s. If you could get a company behind you that was prepared to seriously invest, the more they spent on it, the more they would have to spend on advertising to get their money back. Okay, so they did Arista Records with Clive Davis did a wonderful job advertising the album, and so we became media darlings for a tiny little bit of time. It's the kind of thing about everyone will be famous for 5 minutes or 15 minutes, this thing. So it was very quick, and then it was over. I have re-recorded When the Heart Rules the Mind, and I think I would stick my neck out and say, for me, it's a better version than the original. I think the production and the arrangement is
Way
better.
more raw. The original version is way too polished, too overdubs, too synthesizers, too. It's quite more rawer feeling your
Well,
version.
I think the version. I don't know if you heard the version I did, but the
Yes, I
version
did.
I've done is I think more powerful. I might add even more to it and put an orchestra on it and have the riff punched out with strings as well as the guitars. So, but there we go. I'd like to hear it again, super compressed on FM radio. Wouldn't that be a joy? That would be extraordinary. But if it doesn't happen, hey, what the hell? That was
Yeah.
then. I still thought it was a great tune. I just thought it could be done better. I wanted to have a go at singing it myself, and have my own production values on it, etc., etc., etc. So essentially the same song, which Steve Howe and I wrote together. To be honest, he really came up with the instrumental part, and I came up with the song. So we put the two together, and it was a good combination of things, because it sounded progressive, but it also sounded like a commercial song. So we had great potential with it.
Yeah. This year, talking about anniversary, wrapping up these things of anniversary and these things.
Sure.
And we have the 50th anniversary of A Trick of the Tail. Window Watering too, but Window Watering is by the end of the year, December.
Sure. Yes.
Looking back
Yeah.
at the recordings, what do you remember about the moment it clicked when that Phil would be the singer of the group? In 2007, I think, the band
Yeah.
had done some mini documentary series about each album that you guys talking about each album. And Tony Banks had revealed a short list of possible names of great English singers that you had considered to audition or something, like the guys from Manfred Mann's band, Mick Rogers, Colin Bluestone, who used to be on the Zombies. Is it true that you considered these names? Some of them auditioned properly for the band. How was this process before properly clicking up? Phil's gonna be the lead singer.
Okay. Well, the process was a little bit like this. When I did Voyage of the Acolyte in 1975, Phil sang one of the songs on it. Right back when I first joined the band, one of the first things I wrote for Genesis was a little short song with Phil called For Absent Friends, and he was the singer on that. Phil was also the singer on More Fool Me on Selling England by the Pound. And so we were aware that Phil had a great voice.
Yeah.
But there was a resistance in the band to the idea of somebody sitting behind the kit, because Peter Gabriel was dressing up in everything, running everywhere, and being very much the visual show. Um, when Phil first got married to his first wife Andy, um, I met John Anderson at the wedding, at the reception, and John
Yeah.
said to me, "You know, Phil's got a great voice. Why don't you make Phil the singer and get in another instrumentalist?" And I said, "Well, I agree with you. That's what I would do, but I don't think the others will agree to this." That was the state of play at that time. But then we went through these auditions and various people and what have you, um, and um, and then Phil said, "Let me have a go." And the first thing he recorded was Squonk, and it sounded really good. And suddenly we had an album of songs that didn't have a lead singer. And then suddenly we found the lead singer was someone within the ranks of the band. So ironically, I got my way, Phil got his way, and the others had to concede that we were right.
And this album features, for me, one of your best compositions, which was Entangled, which is basically your song with some aid from Tony Banks. And Phil used to say that that song was a sort of Mary Poppins soundtrack,
Yeah,
sound alike.
that's right. He said when I played him the verse, over the rooftops and houses, he said this has got a Mary Poppins feel to it. And I was thinking of perhaps Mary Poppins meets Crosby, Stills and Nash, the idea of a three-part harmony on the chorus. Actually, it wasn't really a chorus, but it's a repeated refrain with slightly different words each time.
Hmm.
And it came out really well. It's actually, you had a lot of 12-string guitars on the beginning, and Tony was playing 12-string, Mike was playing 12-string. I had two guitars. I tracked one in a usual octave and then one at half speed to make it sound a little bit more like that sound that you got with the musical box from years earlier. So this idea of multi guitars chiming away was something very much part of the early appeal of Genesis. Very Genesis, but in a very
Hmm.
different way to the Genesis that people think of as the 1980s
Yeah.
version of
Yeah.
Genesis, which um, was, I think, really more about the voice and drums than about all the other instrumentation. But
Hmm.
I'm a guitarist, and I like detail. I think I think it's important to have detail.
I'd like to bring out to a conversation Iago. He's a really a fan of Genesis and your work, as so I am I. To do our penultimate question for our interview, he'll do the question and I will do the final one.
Okay.
It's about your career. Now we're gonna
Yeah.
stick back to your solo career. Pode
Okay.
fazer, Iago.
Okay. Hello, Mr. Steve.
Hi
It's
there.
a pleasure to be able to speak with you,
Tudo
to
bem.
you, to you.
Okay.
Uh, okay. So here's the question. Your first four solo albums are considered absolute classics, and the solo tracks that appear more frequently in your set lists are usually from these albums, like Everyday,
Yes.
Spectral Mornings, Shadow of the Hierophant.
Yeah.
But outside of these four albums,
Yes.
what solo works would you say are more relevant, or like that? Which ones would you say you value most?
Well, I very much enjoyed doing the title track from Please Don't Touch. And I played that extensively live for many years, particularly when I was out doing solo stuff right at the beginning. And there are many other albums that I've done in different styles, things that I was proud of. For instance, I did a blues album called Blues with a Feeling, and I was very proud of the harmonica work that I managed to do on Born in Chicago, a Nick Gravenites song, and that I first heard the Paul Butterfield band do. And so on that album, I did all the guitar work and all the harmonica work, and it was 50-50, guitar and harmonica, because harmonica was my first instrument. But it's not something that's popular with let me see, with progressive listeners. There's also another track on that called A Blue Part of Town, where the harmonica is being played, distorted harmonica, but almost like a sort of cross between Stan Getz and Jerome Kern and Stevie Wonder. It's it's a blues. It's mournful, but it has a more sort of jazz orientation to it. But it's essentially it's a melodic thing. And then other things that I'm proud of. Oh my God, there are so many tracks. I can't remember them off the top of my head. There've been so many of them. On each album, there's usually one thing that I'm proud of. I might be proud of the orchestration on one or on another. A Midsummer Night's Dream, again, with lots of orchestra and nylon guitar, very very melodic. It was a hit with the classical crossover charts back in the day. But that's a very different audience to the rock audience. So a rock audience may not be aware of that. So, but over the years, I've been able to wear a number of different faces or hats and be one thing for one bunch of people, to be I mean, I loved the work of Tchaikovsky, for instance, and I always thought, well, if Tchaikovsky was a guitarist, would he have sounded like this with the orchestrations and melodies that characterize his work? So there was a huge influence of this. So, one half of me wanted to do that. Another half of me wanted to be a black blues man. I wanted to be a zillion things at once, and just to be like a kind of a character actor or a chameleon where people wouldn't necessarily know that it was the same person who'd done all these things that were, very different. But, that's a case of saying goodbye to popularity, but having stuff that where the quality of the work will stand on its own. That was the idea. So I've always been an idealist in this way, and I've played around with music a lot with different forms, different styles, a pan-genre approach. Uh, this is not what a record company want to hear. What a record company want to hear is that you're immediately identifiable and you keep remaking that same tune that was a hit way back when. But to sustain that over a period of 55 or 56 years, I've been making music professionally. No, I don't want. I don't want to do that. I'm not interested in that level of success. Success for me is in coming up with a great tune that sounds great, and at the end of the day, that can't be the same person, you know, uh, completely to completely baffle people. That's fine. I mean, I'm amazed with certain actors like Gene Hackman a character actor would always be different. And a fan wrote to me and said, listening to my albums, it was a bit like when there was a new one about to come out. He said it's a bit like a Gene Hackman film. You know it's going to be good, but you don't know how good. And I would say the same thing of, Gary Oldman, where he could be
Great
so many different
analogy.
things. For someone to play the range of from Sid Vicious to Winston
Yeah.
Churchill, that's a pretty wide range.
Mhm.
So I can understand why certain actors would want to play a Nazi 1 minute and the Pope the next. That's It's possible in the course of a lifetime. Not to be recommended in music, but that's all the more reason to want to do it, to take the rebel approach and say, well, today we'll try something else. Maybe we'll work with sitar today, or we'll work with Indian music, and we'll try different things. And indeed, there's something coming out with Steve Rothery that we were talking about earlier, and that will
Mhm.
be different again.
Wait, before I go, I would just like to say, Mr. Steve, that me and Kelvin, we were together at the concert you did with Genetics in Niterói. We were watching that
Yes.
concert together.
Uh-huh.
I even managed to get a picture of you at the end of that concert.
Uh-huh.
Yes.
Right. Yeah.
It was one of the coolest days of my life. So thank you very
Oh,
much for that.
oh, well, thank you. Thank you. Yeah. I mean, anyway, good luck with all things
Uh,
yourself.
and
Yeah.
my final question is related
Okay.
to that things.
Yes.
Do in 2019, in the various times in the past, you had played some tours focused on your solo albums. 2019, you had played Spectral Mornings alongside Selling England by the Pound
Yes.
and
Yeah.
all of this stuff. And
Yeah.
this year, Voyage of the Alcolite marked
Yes.
52
Yes.
last year,
Yeah.
actually. Do you intend to do any tours in the future revisiting your solo albums in full? If so, I would like to ask which one would you revisit today without thinking too much about it? Things of
Well,
playing 5 songs or playing the full album, the first set or
yes.
whatever.
Well, I think that if I was totally capable of being able to pull it off, I would love to do something like A Midsummer Night's Dream, and then something from Genesis, but it would be such a huge undertaking, with an orchestra and all of that. So I think what I have to do is try and design a stage show that is, perhaps, maybe one thing is a serious concert in classical style, but maybe the other half is completely schizophrenically all out rock, heavy metal, or something. And that would be completely crazy. But the question is there an audience that's prepared to sit there and take both for the power that both those things would have? Or indeed, is it a very separate audience that prefers to listen to Andres Segovia? How many people have got Andres Segovia in their collection and Jimi Hendrix? You have to be a real guitar lover to experience the two. But there are people I know who love both.
For sure.
Baroque,
For sure.
Baroque and blues are both player-based mediums, so it should be possible. But it's very skitsy. I can't help my creative schizophrenia. This is just how I am. I fell in love with nylon guitar, and I fell in love with blues guitar, and I can get lost those two very separate worlds, but they're worlds that I've inhabited in my heart.
Thank you so much, Steve.
Thank
Really,
you.
really, as you'd said in England, bloody happy to having the chance of talking with you again.
Thank you.
I'm a
Thank
huge
you.
fan of your work
Well, thank
in
you very
various
much.
capacities.
Thank you. Thank you.
Suspect. Thank you so much. Feel free to welcome to being able in the near future to do more interviews. We're gonna talk about more of your upcoming solo albums and projects. Really an
Thank you.
honor for all of us, for me, for Iago.
It's a pleasure to talk to you again, and all the best. Tudo de bom para você, para vocês.
Tamo
I have
junto.
a few words I remember from, there we go, tudo de bom. And
Bye bye. Thank you.
everybody, todo mundo, ciao.